hit, pull, squeeze, and be tight. Now, you may not know what I just said and you may think I'm crazy, but these words are a cheerleader's second language. I know this to be true because I was a competitive cheerleader for over 8 years through the organization called Atlanta All-Stars, or also known as ATA. Many of you to this day still know the sport of cheerleading as girls lining the football fields with pom-poms in their hands and short skirts around their waists. What you may not know is how cheerleading has transformed into a respected, competitive sport that pushes their bodies to a maximum endurance and strength level. In order to fully understand competitive cheerleading, you must first know its history, how the sport is scored, and how the cheerleaders are affected both physically and mentally. As stated previously, it is vital to know the background of cheerleading. Cheerleading has been around for decades, actually since the 1860s. Varsity, which is the largest cheerleading organization, explains through their article titled "Welcome to Cheerleading" how competitive cheerleading came to be today. Cheerleading's roots are closely tied to football. In the 1880s and 90s, colleges such as the University of Minnesota began losing games, and students gathered in order to cheer these teams on in order for them to win. Cheerleading advanced in the 1920s when a feminist movement began, and finally females were able to cheer. The article goes on to explain that in the year 1948, Lawrence Herkimer, also known as Herky, hosted the first cheerleading camp where words such as Herky and pom-poms were first introduced. By the 1960s, cheerleading organizations such as the Universal Cheerleaders Association, UCA, have been developed to create guidelines for the sport. By the 1980s and 1990s, and still today, cheerleading has rapidly grown in popularity and in skill. Cheerleading is no longer just a sideline sport, but is a daring all-star sport that not just anybody can take part in. It is very important to know how a typical cheerleader lives their athletic life. The scholarly article titled "The Guide to Cheerleading," written by Jacqueline Wright at the University of South Florida, describes a typical cheerleading season. It states that cheerleaders usually begin tryouts at the end of May and end their season at the start of May the following year. Therefore, competitive cheerleading is a year-round sport. At the end of July and the start of August, the cheerleaders will receive a choreographed routine in which they must learn, and they will memorize, perfect, critique, and perform all season long. By October, cheerleaders must begin going full out. What this means is that they don't need to practice their routine section by section any longer, but they put it all together and start to perform it in front of their coaches and gym mates. The competitions typically begin at the end of November and are continued through the rest of the season. The article goes on to explain that in the arena where it all takes place, each team must complete a 2 to 3 minute routine competing against competitors that travel from all around the world. Typically, cheerleaders wear a tight long sleeve top, tight spandex short, and a large bow on top of their heads. They use lots of hairspray and glitter, and they usually wear white sneakers. They must all match in order to create unity in the visualization of their routine. The athletes must perform their stunts, flips, and dances and make them as seamless and perfect as possible. In addition, in order to fully comprehend the sport, it is important to know how teams are formed and what their required skills are. In all-star competitive cheerleading, not only are there different size teams, including extra small, small, large, and extra large, there are also different age groups. In addition, there are different levels that contain different skill sets. The levels range from 1 to 6, with 6 being the highest in tumbling and stunting capabilities. As briefly stated before, each team is scored by a panel of judges based on 6 different sections of the routine. These sections include standing tumbling, running tumbling, main stunts, pyramid, dance, and jumps. In the 2014 scholarly report titled Cheerleading by Christina N. Machuca, she begins explaining on page 15 the different positions in stunting. These positions include the main and side base, which are the support underneath. There's also a back spot that stands holding the stunt tightly for stability, and there's also the most important position, which is the flyer. They are held and thrown into the air repeatedly, completing flexible motions. As each level increases, the skill level difficulty in each section of the routine increases as well, such as in stunting. Based off this research, it seems as though cheerleading is nothing to be taken lightly. In a Time magazine article, the author, Rachel Greenspan, reports that competitive cheerleading is ranked the most dangerous and injury-causing sport. Well, it's the second, behind football, of course. In addition, the author interviews cheerleaders from the Netflix original series titled Cheer, and they describe that although many bones are broken and heads are concussed, They continue to fall in love with this sport more and more every single day. Cheerleaders always leave their heart and soul on the mat after competing, and they never give up no matter how hard it gets. Ironically, cheerleaders are no longer cheering others on, but they take the mat in order to be cheered for. They face blood, sweat, and tears in order to gain the highest score and bring home any national championship title they can get. Because of all this hard work and dedication, competitive cheerleading is evolving every day, and it continues to be on the rise.